Did y'all hear the latest from the Ford CEO? I'm telling you, it pays to listen to what these CEOs and these billionaires and these ultra rich are saying, because they're telling us exactly what they're doing. They're telling us their plans, and everything that they're saying is everything wrong with America. Not everything, because there's a lot of stuff wrong with America, but it's a great deal of what's wrong with America and the direction our economy is going. And I'm here to tell you, this isn't just about Ford. It's not just about cars, and you're going to want to hear this because this goes pretty deep, and it spells out our future very, very clearly. So if you didn't hear what the Ford CEO said, he's basically talking about how he's mulling around the idea of removing the right to repair. In other words, if you buy a vehicle from Ford, you're not going to be able to repair that vehicle. And a lot of that comes down to proprietary software. And not just that, but they're making these vehicles almost impossible for the average consumer to repair just because it's overcomplicated, and it's unnecessarily overcomplicated. They do this for a reason, because they don't want you taking your car to a local mechanic. They don't want you DIYing. They want you to take it to the dealership so they get the money.
But you don't want people repairing their own vehicles.
No, that's fine. Not for warranty work, though. These are very complicated cars, and we don't think that's safe. For many of the repairs on our vehicles, someone at home like myself could never do it. I mean, I have no problem working on a 73 Bronco. To work on a brand new Bronco, I need all sorts of specialty tools. That's something that, we would put people's lives at risk.
It all comes down to this reoccurring revenue, subscription-based model. That's what everything is moving to. And it is, in fact, destroying this country. Or at the very least, it's destroying the middle and the lower class people, average everyday people like you and I, because who can afford that stuff? If you buy a vehicle from Ford, it's already going to cost you $30 at the very, very low end, probably about 30 grand, up to $100,000+. So there's your reoccurring payment, because how many people can buy a car outright? So you're going to be making payments on that vehicle, but now you have to take it to the dealership because nobody else can work on it, and have them repair your vehicle. They don't make aftermarket parts for these vehicles anymore, and even the OEM doesn't make enough parts to repair these things. That means that the parts are very expensive and they're hard to come by. That also means you can't just run down to the parts store and buy a part and put it on your vehicle. And the mechanics can't do that either.
They are literally building these cars so that you throw them away when they break. Literally, just throw them away when they break. Don't replace it, don't fix it, just throw it away. So I'm installing a camera system and I messed up. Somehow I got myself locked. I'm pretty sure I didn't loop the piece all the way through on the handle. So basically the door was shut. I pulled on it really hard. Door opens. But as you can tell, I broke this. Just a little plastic piece, I broke it. I mean, no biggie, no biggie. I'll look online. Can't find it. I understand it's a newer car. This is 23. I'm like, shoot. Let's call the dealer. So the guy on the phone was like, he spent like 10 minutes. He calls me. He actually had to call me back. Calls me back and says, actually, we can't just get the door handle. I'm like, what do you mean you can't just get the door handle? You have to order the entire door panel. He even said it comes with a new window switch. And then I realized, because I took the dang thing back off, he's not kidding. It is like, they've molded the plastic around it. You cannot get this off. You cannot get that out. What the heck? One, I get, like, this should never break, right? But how many times have you replaced a window switch in a car? It gets wet with water. What are you going to tell me? I need a whole new door panel? It's only a cool $525.
And, it's a bad thing for us, the consumer, but it's also a bad thing for the small, local, family-owned businesses. There's a lot of mechanics out there that make a pretty good living doing this stuff, and it's driving them out of business. They're begging people not to buy these 2026 and beyond cars because they can't work on them. And these car manufacturers are making it a point to make sure that they can't.
Now last week the Ford CEO came out and said he had no technicians to fix all of his broken cars, and that's why it takes a minimum of 2 weeks to get your car looked at a Ford dealership. Now your Ford vehicles used to be really nice, reliable vehicles that were simple to fix, but now they're all junk, made with Chinese parts, Chinese computers, and stuff that's not even reliable enough to make it over 100,000 miles. Let's face it, Jim, your vehicles are crap. And instead of designing them properly, you just put all the fixes on the back of your mechanics who you don't pay enough. Not only are the vehicles crap, but you gotta buy fancy scanners, special sockets and special kits that are expensive just to be able to work on them. Now these are the reasons the mechanic shortage is pretty much everywhere in all dealerships, but Ford is one of the worst about gouging their customers and not paying their techs enough.
Flat rate comes from a day and age where cars were made to last and diagnostics led to replacing broken parts. Now we're chasing wires and shorted out modules that are shorting out 10 other modules. All of these are different computers that are talking to each other, and they're all in one truck. Now explain to me how I'm quickly supposed to find out that a brake module is stopping the tailgate from opening. All that testing? 0.3 of an hour. Flat rate is a system that rewards speed, not complexity. Cars are built too complex nowadays to be worked on at speed. You got to take your time, get it right.
And it doesn't just stop with Ford. This is happening across pretty much every single large car manufacturer out there. They're all simultaneously baking in these subscription-based models. You know, you buy a vehicle and you don't own it anymore because half the features in the car that you paid for are run off of a subscription-based model. You have to pay a monthly fee in order to turn on your heated seats or unlock all the horsepower. And then of course you have all this baked in surveillance that all these car manufacturers are putting in there, which means it monitors things like your eyes, your heartbeat, your face. And I mean, that basically means that if you get in the vehicle and it thinks that you're not in a good physical state to drive, it locks the vehicle. It doesn't even allow you to start it, or you can't put it in drive and go anywhere. So again, this really comes down to the idea that when you buy the vehicle, you don't own it. It's all owned by these corporations. And even though your name's on the title and you're paying for it yearly in the form of taxes, you never actually own the vehicle. And we've seen this play out so many times throughout the years. I mean, think about John Deere. They did the same exact thing. The farmer would buy the tractor, and then suddenly when the tractor broke down, nobody could repair it except for John Deere, because everything was proprietary and you had to have special licenses and all this stuff to unlock the software in order to work on the tractor. And there was actually a lawsuit filed against them and they lost. They had to pay out like $99 million to the farmers for monopolizing the tractor market and forcing people to use John Deere to repair their equipment. Another prime example of this is Nintendo. People bought the Nintendo Switch. I think it was a Switch 2 actually. And when the people that bought this console did something with the console that Nintendo did not agree with, that was not in the terms of service, they tapped into the console through the internet and bricked the console, made it completely unusable. So the people that spent hundreds of dollars on a brand new Nintendo console suddenly could not use it because somebody was monitoring how they were using that console through the internet and shut it off. So it basically became a giant paperweight. That is exactly what we're looking at with these vehicles. And who's to say these car manufacturers aren't going to do that to these cars if you work on your own vehicle? Because now there's a mandatory kill switch baked into all the vehicles also. This is also another requirement that I think is mandatory by 2027. And that also ties into the surveillance and stuff that shuts your vehicle off if it doesn't think you're fit to drive. It's all a way for them to monopolize and corporatize the market and just have total control over everything. And we see this throughout pretty much every other industry across the board. Think about food, for example. The meat industry is a prime example of this, because the meat industry, it used to be broken up into a bunch of private individual meat packers. There were a lot of butcher shops and local family-owned businesses out there. And then suddenly these giant corporations come in. There are now 4 of them, and they control over 80% of the beef industry. And that is because they came in and they just scaled to the moon. They took over everything. The small local family-owned businesses could not compete, and they either bought them out or they forced them out of business. More consolidation happened. That cycle repeated itself until we have the situation that we're in right now, which basically means that those 4 meat packers control the entire market, or nearly control the entire market. And they're able to fix the prices on said market and set the price of meat to whatever they want it to be. So doesn't it make sense that the price of beef has more than doubled over the last 5 years?
Beef prices are at record highs. The average grocery store price for ground beef, more than $6.50 a pound, up 14% over the past year.
And the crazy thing about this is that companies like JBS have been accused of price fixing numerous times, and they have lost in court and had to pay out money for basically it being proven that they're price fixing. That is the reason why things are so expensive, because it's not just beef, it is all of the food industry. The food industry also used to be broken down into small grocers and producers and stuff like that. It's all been consolidated. And when these industries become consolidated and it all gets rolled under these large corporations, it's no longer about the consumer and it's only about profit. And when that happens, that's when we start getting things like shrinkflation. The size of the product goes down, but the price goes up. We start seeing a reduction in quality. They start putting worse ingredients in there. In a lot of cases, they put more ingredients in there because more additives and fillers means that it's cheaper to produce. And that also means that it's less of the actual product that you're paying for. And this is all done in the name to maximize profits. We also see this with the housing industry, because now the housing industry is made up of these gigantic, ultra-rich developers. And they're building apartment complexes, they're building these subdivisions and all these, these housing compounds where they're just cramming all these houses in there as tightly as they can get them in there. And as they're building these houses, they're building them as cheap as they possibly can, using the cheapest labor, the cheapest materials, cutting corners, and doing everything they can to maximize profit. That's why you have these people moving into these apartment complexes now and these houses, and within the first year, and in some cases within the first few months, the place is falling apart. The roof leaks, the plumbing is, messed up. Either the plumbing's leaking or they have issues with things actually working. The electrical's messed up. Everything about these houses, and I would say the housing market, is basically wrong now. Unless you're building your house yourself or you're paying a private contractor to do the work for you, a lot of the stuff on the market today is absolute junk.
$1 million for a bunch of junk OSB plywood and bent 2x4s, plastic plumbing, all thrown together by the cheapest possible bids they can probably get. And you don't even get any land for your $1 million. Look how tiny this lot is. Even Zillow estimates the payment on this place to be over $6,000 a month.
It's a brand new house, it's not gonna have any problems. Well, let me show you all the problems that I find. Screws pointing out of the cabinet right here for the range hood. Kitchen island, literally not secured to the floor.
Your damaged truss member.
All right, well, there's also this. Looks like the dishwasher's leaking.
When I walk into a brand new home just under $1 million, I expect the bar to be set just a little bit higher than what it is nowadays. You ever turn the handle on the shower to cut the water on and the whole wall moves and the handle feels like it's going to fall off? This is why.
200 G's. 200 G's.
This is literally how we have to walk out of our house when it's raining.
But for some reason, the price of all of this stuff, the food, the housing, the cars, you name it, is 2 to 3 times what it was 10, 15 years ago. Why is that? Why is it that the quality has gone down? In a lot of cases, the actual product has gone down, and what we're paying for has gone down, but for some reason the price continues to go up. It is all because of this corporate takeover, this inherent desire for greed and to maximize profit and to just control everything. It all comes down to this monopolization of basically everything in our lives. And it seems like nothing is off the table, nothing is sacred. Because I also saw where there are a lot of artists, like musical artists and stuff like that are having to cancel their tours and their live shows because nobody's buying tickets.
Last week, the Pussycat Dolls became the latest major musical act to pull the plug, canceling nearly its entire North American reunion tour. In a social media post, the group said it had taken an honest look at the North American run and found the numbers didn't work. The band is not alone. Meghan Trainor and Zayn Malik each canceled their full U.S. arena runs in recent weeks. And just days ago, Post Malone scrapped nearly a third of his North American schedule.
And, it makes sense that nobody's buying tickets because who can afford that kind of stuff now? I mean, people are having a hard enough time putting food on the table, so who has the money to go to a concert? But the more I dug into this, the more the actual story began to show itself. Because what's happening is Ticketmaster is one of the largest ticket providers out there, and they have dynamic pricing now. So they look at your spending habits, your buying habits, they look at how much money you make, and based off of all of these factors and all this data that the internet collects from us, it sets the price of the ticket based on those parameters. So if you're a high earner or you like to spend money, the price of your ticket is going to be much higher than somebody who is very, very poor. And when you combine that with corporate greed and the need to maximize profits, you create an environment where no one can afford the tickets because all tickets are expensive. And some are going to be more than others because of dynamic pricing, but it's all inflated. And don't think for a second that this dynamic pricing stops with Ticketmaster, because there are a lot of these large corporations out there talking about dynamic pricing.
Life seemingly is getting more expensive, and the choices on where you can get things appears to be dwindling. And now Kroger is in the hot seat the past few months. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Robert Casey writing this strong letter to the CEO, and Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib set to social media, all of them disapproving of digital price tags and artificial intelligence, accusing the grocery giant of moving towards dynamic pricing.
To be fair, it's something that politicians have jumped on because there's all these data sources, privacy, facial recognition. It sounds bad.
Digital price tags could change in seconds, and politicians fear this could turn into surge pricing. Surge pricing is similar to Uber. The time of day will dictate what you pay for something. Walmart, another proponent of digital price tags, made headlines as they face a lawsuit claiming it charges higher prices at the register than it does on their shelves. Whether it's fighting junk fees on concert tickets and airlines or challenging grocery mergers, the Federal Trade Commission is lifting up the hood on corporate practices.
The companies that we are looking at in our study have all publicly touted their ability and use of AI and machine learning to engage in data-driven or targeted or personalized pricing.
Surveillance pricing is pricing products based on a consumer's behavior or characteristics. And with online shopping, retailers have more access than ever to information about a consumer, whether it's their location, demographics, credit history, or browsing history. And yes, that thing called cookies, it's tracking you all the time when you're using your Google browser, unless you opt out of it. And technically, this means that companies can charge you different prices to different people for the same items.
And there's also been a lot of reports that have highlighted different travel rates based on the hardware or devices that consumers are using.
And you got to think too, when the dollar goes away and we get down to the digital dollar and they have all this AI pulling this data from us, basically surveilling us 24/7, and they're going to know everything about our spending habits and how much money we have and basically everything about us, that will be a very easy way for them to set dynamic pricing and to have people pay what they think they should pay. And this is very much a reoccurring theme. Every time a small business gets bought out and it gets rolled under a large corporation, the quality goes down, the ingredients change, and in a lot of cases, the size of the product goes down. So basically what you're getting is going to be less than what you were getting before, yet the price goes up. We've seen this with Ben & Jerry's ice cream. That was a big thing that happened. They got bought out by Unilever, the people that make cleaning products and cosmetics. And we also saw this happen with Burt's Bees, who got bought out by Clorox. They make bleach. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of examples of this. It happens every single day. And the crazy thing about this is that you have the illusion of choice. Like when you walk into the store, you see all these different brands in there, and you're thinking, man, I've got all these brands to choose from. Not knowing that all those brands are funneled under just a couple large brands like Unilever and Clorox and these large corporations. They control everything, and all of those corporations are then owned and controlled by the shareholders, and the shareholders don't care about anything except for money. And this is the future of the country. This is what the CEOs are actively telling us. Like I mentioned, it pays to listen to what they're saying because they're telling us their plans, and their exact framework that's being rolled out across the board in unison is consolidate, control, price fix, create a reoccurring revenue model, and then maximize shareholder profit. That's exactly what's happening. And I don't know about y'all, but I think it's high time that these people start reading the room, because people cannot afford these reoccurring revenue models. We pay enough in reoccurring revenue when we pay taxes. That's the biggest reoccurring revenue model out there. And then you have all these other reoccurring revenue models like insurance that you have to have on certain things, and internet and cell phones, and then people are paying for entertainment and all the features and stuff that you have to pay to keep on. People can't afford this stuff. And when everything in our lives becomes a reoccurring revenue model, we're basically just stuck bleeding money. And at a time where it's becoming harder and harder for people to put food on the table, it doesn't make sense that they do this, because they're basically pricing all of the consumers out of their products. And I'm here to tell you right now, the Buy Nothing Rebellion, it's in full swing, and there are a lot of people joining into this movement. I'm talking millions and millions probably per day, because people are fed up with this corporate takeover and all of this greed and deception, because people are realizing that we don't need more stuff. We need options. We need relief. We need everything that these corporations are not giving us. For once in our lives, we need to be put first, because right now we're being put on the back burner. It's not about us anymore. It's just about money. And when everything becomes about money, where do the people go? What are the people worth? They're only worth $1. And that's exactly what these corporations have done. They placed a dollar amount on every single one of our heads, and that's what they focus on. And that is destroying this country and crushing the middle class. But if there were ever a silver lining to come from this, it would be that people are now choosing to opt out. They're joining this Buy Nothing Rebellion, and they're not participating. They're realizing that it's not about having more, it's about requiring less. And that's what people are doing. They're not buying all of this cheap, expensive, overpriced junk. Instead, they're buying more secondhand products. They're buying from small local family-owned businesses. They're buying their food locally. And they're supporting their local economy. They're taking the money away from these large corporations, which is what we should be doing, and they're putting it back into the hands of the hardworking men and women that are the backbone of this country. And that is us. Us little guys out here just trying to get by. And when it comes to fighting back against this stuff, that is exactly how we win this fight. Because the only thing these people understand is money. So it makes sense that if we hit them where it hurts, which is their checkbook, their pocketbook, they're going to change their ways. They have to if they want to stay in business. So the more business we can take away from them, and the more that we can vote with our dollars and make sure they understand that we are no longer willing to be taken advantage of, the faster we win. And I truly believe that as more people join this Buy Nothing Rebellion, and they wise up to this stuff, and they stop paying for all of these subscriptions, and they choose not to participate, and they just opt out, then winning this fight will eventually become inevitable.